Hello, my name is Jim McGillivray and this is the Pipe Box, your source for all things piping. If you find this video useful, please give it a like and please subscribe to this YouTube channel to see more videos like this. We're going to go over some music today, and you can print out this music by going back to the description of this video on my YouTube channel and you will see a link to a PDF there. Today I would like to do with you two jigs, two-parted jigs, an Irish jig and a Scottish jig. The first jig is the Irish jig. It's called My Darling Asleep. It probably originated on the Irish uilleann bagpipe or on the fiddle, but we have Pipe Major Terry Tully to thank for giving us a Great Highland Bagpipe arrangement of this tune. Terry Tully is an extraordinary Irish piper, and he was Pipe Major of the St. Lawrence O'Toole pipe band for many, many years, winning a world championship with that band with him as the Pipe Major. The second tune, the Scottish tune, is called The Lady in the Bottle, and it was written by Archie Kenneth. Archie Kenneth lived from 1915 to 1989, and he's best known for his work with the Pibroch Society for decades. He was instrumental in the publication of several of the later Pibroch Society books and is a very significant piping figure. He was also a very prolific composer of highly original tunes, someone might say at some point quirky, but some very good tunes. He's published a book of light music and a book of Pibroch, and among those tunes in that book is The Lady in the Bottle. Okay, let's have a quick look at the score for both tunes. The first thing you notice in these jigs is that most of the notes are the same length. That is true. Welcome to jig playing. Quarter notes do break up the eighth note action in the middles and ends of the lines in the first tune. The second tune is not much different, and this is pretty typical of jigs. Eighth notes are the order of the day, even eighth notes. You may also notice that the second tune is a little more dense with notes than the first. It's a harder tune. The first tune, I would say, classes easy for a jig. The second tune is intermediate, just sliding toward difficult at times. I'd like you to notice the last note of the first tune. It's a D. Now, not always, but often, the last note of a tune will tell you what key the tune is in. My Darling Asleep ends on a D and is in fact in the key of D major. Lady in the Bottle ends on high A, and the tune is in fact in the key of A major. When I play a set of tunes, I like to vary my key signatures to give the tunes tonal uplift. When you hear these tunes played together, you will hear the tonal uplift in the D to A break between the two tunes. So I don't simply pick tunes that I like and stick them together willy-nilly. I like to incorporate key changes into my sets of tunes. This increases excitement and interest in your selection. You don't even really need to be able to identify key signatures in order to be able to do this. Just play the last part of one tune and the first part of the next and see if you can hear a tonal shift between the tunes. If you can, that means they're probably in different key signatures. See if you like the tonal shift, and if you do, you can put those two tunes together. If you don't hear a tonal shift, those two tunes are probably in the same key signature. So when you put sets of tunes together, try to vary your key signatures for interest and variety. Okay, let's hear My Darling Asleep and The Lady in the Bottle played on a Deger electronic chanter. was My Darling Asleep and The Lady in the Bottle, played on a Deger electronic chanter. I trust you could hear the distinctive key change when I went from the first tune into the second tune, that tonal uplift that I spoke about. We're going to play everything in these two tunes exactly as written. There are lots of eighth notes, all written the same length, and that is the way we are going to play them. What we will be striving to do is not play any eighth notes too short, not crushing eighth notes. In the first tune, we're going to especially focus on GDEs. GDEs are crucial in jig playing. They have to be played evenly, they can't be crushed, and they can't be ahead of the beat. I have a whole video on this YouTube channel devoted to playing GDEs in jig time. So in bar 1 and 2, we see our first GDEs. What makes these two GDEs more difficult than standard GDEs is that there is a tockum in the middle. So we play a tockum from C down to low A in the first group of 3, and a tockum from B to low G in the second group. Your tendency will be to crush the first note and rush down into the tockum, something like this. You want to wait for the G grace note, and you want to make sure that the first note of the group of 3 is not held. We're not going to point it, but we're going to make sure that it gets the length it deserves. Perhaps that C and that B sound like they were a bit longer than the other eighth notes, but I don't think they were. They were nicely on the beat and they were given their due. In bar 3, we see another GDE. This one starts on low G. Now you have to play from low G up to low A with a D grace note, and some of you might find that a bit challenging. So again, your tendency will be to rush off that. So make sure you give that first note its due. That's the first part. In the second part, we have more GDEs right off the bat. There is a GDE in bar 1 and bar 2 and bar 3, and more in line 2. What I would like to focus on in the second part here are the last 3 notes in bar 1 and the last 3 notes in bar 2. They look like a very, very simple run of 3 notes. There's only one grace note. It's not sort of technically heavy, but controlling these 3 fingers can be difficult. And again, you may tend to let the fingers fall to the chanter quickly or come off the chanter quickly. Try to avoid Aside from those points, we're going to push out the dotted quarters at the ends of the phrases and the ends of the lines. And I can't stress enough, we're going to play all of the eighth notes exactly the same length. Okay, let's hear My Darling Asleep played again, this time on a practice chanter. Lady in the Bottle opens with a GDE, and that appears in the start of the second line as well. Again, we're going to play these nice and open. We're going to play them dead even, just as we talked about in My Darling Asleep. After that, that's the end of the GDEs. There are no more GDEs in Lady in the Bottle. What we do have that's a little bit different from anything we found in My Darling Asleep are two quarter notes in the middle of bar 2. Quarter notes need to be held out in jigs. I find inexperienced players tend to round these bars out. They don't hold the quarter notes quite long enough, and the quarter notes and the eighth notes end up almost the same length. So what you want in this bar is something like this. Try to avoid this. Push out the two C's. In bars 3 and 4, we're going to see something else that we didn't see in My Darling Asleep, and that is strikes. We have a strike on E and we have 2 strikes on B. For some of you, this might be the most technically difficult part of Lady in a Bottle because, again, we tend to crush the note before a strike. So in bar 3, what I might often hear is this. In those 2 bars, what I might often hear is this. The note before the strike needs to be very open, especially before the E strike. And the B strike. I want you to hear how clear the note before the strike is in all 3 spots. Really open those out and make them as rhythmical as possible. That's it for the first part. In the second part of Lady in a Bottle, all we need to focus on are the first 2 bars. Everything else applies from the first part to the second part, but the only thing new is in the first 2 bars, where we have some flipping back and forth between hands with some 3-note runs that use much of the scale. What I want you to do there is hit the note that is circled in green as late as you can. And then don't crush it once you hit it. Avoid this. And getting progressively faster in those 2 bars. Keep them focused right on the beat. Wait for that very first note in each group of 3. Okay, those are our major concerns in Lady in the Bottle. Let's hear the tune played on a practice chanter. So, as we finish with these 2 jigs, let me say that the most important thing in jig playing is not tempo, it's rhythm. Your job as a piper playing jigs is to make people tap their feet. If people in the room aren't tapping their feet, I'm not doing my job. A jig that's played slower than optimum tempo can be quite entertaining as long as it's played rhythmically and on the beat. A jig played at optimum tempo but pushed ahead of the beat will not make people tap their feet, and it will not be a successful jig. Technical and musical control is the crucial thing in jig playing. The jig set that I played at the start of this video on the Dagger was 118 beats per minute. Optimum jig tempo is probably between 116 and 124 beats per minute. Though, as I said, you can play a jig fairly slowly as maybe 105 beats per minute, and it can be quite entertaining again if it's played on the beat and rhythmically. The metronome can be a really important tool in terms of ingraining the music into your musical mind. Pick a tempo that you know your fingers can manage. Turn on the metronome and sing the jigs to the metronome. This will help put the rhythm into your head so that your brain, your musical brain, is running your fingers, not your fingers running your brain. Your fingers are not qualified to run your brain. Okay, that's it for our little jig set. Maybe you can go on to my Pipetunes sheet music download site and find a third jig that you can add to this little set. That way you'll have a set of about 90 seconds worth of jigs. Listen to how the tunes interact together and come up with a nice key signature change, a tonal uplift, and you'll have 3 tunes rather than 2. Okay, that's it for today. Until next time, from me, Jim McGillivray at the Pipe Box, good piping.